Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm really excited because I have my son's occupational therapist here with me today to talk, Robin Wilt. We are going to be diving into a few topics that's important in our community, some questions that she gets asked a lot about occupational therapy, what role the family plays, and how to really build a solid relationship with your therapist. So if you're a parent navigating OT, or if you're just curious about how occupational therapy works, stay tuned because we've got a lot to cover today. So, first things first, Robin, let's talk about how important family involvement is in therapy. I'm actually very involved in therapy. So I feel like it can make a huge difference with like our son's progress. So I just want to know from you, can you share a bit about why it's so important for families to be part of the therapy process?
Sure, yeah. Family involvement is really important in therapy. Therapists really are trained as experts in child development, and the family are the ones who are the expert in your child. So when we can collaborate and work together, that's when we can really work on goals that are important to you. And I think that it's really beneficial for the child because they're only with us in therapy for such a small amount of time during the week, and they spend all their time with you. So if you know what's going on and what we're working on and strategies that you've seen work in therapy, then you can use them at home and help generalize their skills a little bit better.
I think that was one of the huge things for me. Like, I always tell people when we got his diagnosis, it's not like they said, here's your diagnosis and here's your manual.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure I could learn from you so that I could use some of those same skills at home with him.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. And like you said, there's no manual. And when you can see your child from a therapist's point of view, along with your own, you can really learn, how they see the world in a different way than you do as a parent. And I think that's really helpful.
Awesome. Okay. Now, one of the first things I asked when we started therapy was, is it okay if I stay? Early on, I think wanting to stay was not even just so I could learn, but because he was so young. He was 3 when we started therapy. So I don't know if I did it for myself or for you because I really didn't know what was going to happen. So I know a lot of parents are probably wondering the same thing. So what's your take on parents sitting in on therapy sessions?
I welcome it. I absolutely welcome it. I think like we just talked about, it's so important for generalizing. And I think, like you said, the younger the kid is, the more important that is. Or if they're older, but they're not like an accurate historian, like if they can't explain what happened, then, we really, for a safety issue, it should be completely transparent what your child is doing in therapy. And I really encourage parents to be in the room, and not only to be there watching, but being an active participant. It can be really helpful to coach and see how it's done at home so that you can, get the most out of playtime.
Yay. Okay. So on the opposite end, I guess another big one is it okay if I wait outside? Because sometimes as parents, we think we're being helpful by staying, but is there ever a time when it's better for the parent to step out?
Absolutely. And I mean, it's all a case by case situation, but with some kids that I work with, I get the most out of our therapy session if they view us on an equal playing field and we create this like shared world together if we're working on play skills. And if a parent is coming in and they feel some type of pressure, that might be tricky, but there's still ways to be involved if that is the case, or if your child is really distracted by you being there, wants to show off, or wants to, refuse. Either way.
My kids.
So, but I've had families who Zoom in. If you can't be in the session for whatever reason, your therapist should definitely talk to you about everything that happened during the session and give you things to do at home.
Okay, so now let's dive into some of the behaviors we see at home that might be a bit confusing. So a big one for us was, he won't use any of the calming strategies in the moment, but he does therapy and he knows it. Why? Why is that happening?
Right. So typically when you use a calming strategy is before, like when you're in this rumbling stage of like, you haven't quite exploded yet, but you're getting there, like some things maybe triggered you. So that's the time that a child should be able to use a calming strategy. And sometimes it can be like not until they are actually in that explosive, dysregulated state that we try to be like, okay, here's some vibration, here's your swing, whatever they've worked on in therapy. But at that point, they're in this fight or flight mode and they're not thinking and making choices at that point.
Right.
So really how kids can calm down is through co-regulation.
Yes.
So yeah, co-regulation is what kids do at least until they're 8. And that's sharing when their adult kind of shares their calm with their child.
Right.
So being in the room, being next to them, modeling the coping strategies or things that are calming to your child in that moment will lead to them being able to calm down and do it on their own. But some families have kind of a misconception that you can just be like, here's your weighted blanket and that it will work. But, that's not always the case. And those calming strategies are usually better used right before and right after when you're recovering from some type of dysregulation.
So I know another thing you hear from parents a lot is, why won't he listen when I tell him to do something like clean his room? And so that was me. And I know that can be frustrating. And I feel like because it is so broad, like clean your room, there are times even for myself as a person who does have ADHD. So there's so much I have to do. I don't even know where to start. And so sometimes I feel like maybe that's where he's coming from. So is that what's happening with him?
Exactly. Well, I love getting those kinds of questions in therapy because there can be a million reasons why go clean your room is hard. Maybe it's like you said with like initiating the task, or maybe it's breaking it down into steps. Maybe it's time management. Maybe there's too much visual clutter and they're having trouble organizing it. Maybe they didn't hear the instructions as well as someone else might have. So there's a lot of different strategies that you can use that your therapist can work with you on, whether it's writing down, like for my daughter, she's pretty disorganized sometimes. And when I told her to clean her room this week, she was like, not having it. But I wrote down, okay, pick up the trash first, then your socks, and just kind of gave her
actionable
a list.
Steps.
Exactly. So that is a strategy that worked for her. Other kids, they might have more of like a time management or an attention difficulty during it, and they get distracted by things. So maybe listening to a podcast or listening to a song while you're doing something specific might help for them, or a timer. So it really depends on the kid, and that's a conversation that's great and why it's important to work with your therapist on it.
Yes. Now, one of the questions I've seen like floating around, especially social media, why does my child stim? Stimming is something that happens a lot. So that's something we experience a lot at home. And I know other parents are out here dealing with the same thing. So can you explain exactly why kids stim and what it means?
Yeah. So stimming comes from self-stimulatory behavior. It's a repetitive action, generally sensory driven. So it could look like hand flapping or humming or spinning, rocking, picking at your nails. And stimming serves a lot of purposes in neurodivergent kids and adults, actually. So it can often be an expression of joy, like if you have a lot of extra energy and you are getting that out, or it's most often used to regulate. So, and a lot of times the stim that child does best with is indicative of what their sensory system is needing more of.
Okay.
So if they're kind of like flapping their hands, maybe that's a visual need that they have that they're meeting by stimming. Or if it's, vocal, that might be an auditory stim.
Okay.
Jumping might be getting extra input to their
Mm-hmm.
muscles. And they're doing it because it feels good. And we really shouldn't try to keep someone from doing
stimming.
that. Yeah.
Yes. I
Serves a
always
purpose.
tell people, especially in the classrooms, we don't keep kids from stimming unless they are like going to harm themselves or somebody else. And even
Sure.
in that situation, maybe we can like redirect them
Yeah.
to do something else that doesn't cause any sort of harm to themselves or anybody else. But
Right.
I always try to encourage people to stim.
Yeah. Like maybe something that meets that same need.
Right.
So I've worked with a kid who sticks his fingers, deep into his mouth.
Right.
And that, wasn't good for him for a lot of reasons.
Right.
And so they were able to redirect with an oral fidget, and he, it
Right.
worked really well for him. So it's good to look at it through a sensory lens so that you can give a replacement if you need to. But yes, I agree. Let them stim.
Yes. Okay. How can I support my child's progress at home?
Okay. So this is different for every therapist.
Yes.
I can give you a home program, and it can have, exercises, things for hand strengthening, things to practice. But what I really want to stress is the best thing you can do with your kid is to just play with them.
Okay.
So really following their lead and getting into an imaginary world with them. Play is the main occupation of childhood is play. It's where we learn how to problem solve, where we learn, how to regulate our emotions and practice social skills and do things like imitation. All of that happens in the context of play. And I'm not talking about a board game. I'm talking about like building an imaginary world, like
like would it be like you see the tea parties and stuff like that, allowing them their imaginations to just kind of run wild,
right? So normally what I do when I'm wanting to engage and build this world with a kid is I'll kind of see what they're doing. Let's say they're, I don't know, playing with cars or something, and I can tell that they really like the visual portion of like watching it go. I might add another visual component to their play until I become the most fun thing in the room and an important part of their play. And then we can build on that, add in different feelings, add in like running into a problem, like something is stuck way up high or something like that. You can add in characters and emotions and just see like how far you can stretch that play before your child is like, I don't know what's going on, and bows out. But just kind of keep going up that play ladder, starting from what they love, which might be organizing play, and then see how far you can get.
That's actually really insightful because honestly, I do like playing with my kids, but there are times I think we do take that for granted because we'll get home, we're tired. And I know it's kind of cliche. We're just tired and we don't play enough with our kids. But I don't ever stop to think of how much good it can be doing them.
That's what I'm saying. It's like it can be a priority, and it doesn't have to be for a long time. Evidence shows that just 10 minutes is good. So
awesome. Okay, so when we're doing OT, what should I expect in terms of progress? And maybe I guess that might look different for everyone depending on what the goals are.
Exactly. So generally we make goals together. There's an initial evaluation with some standardized testing and things like that, and lots of parent interview. And then we make a plan together. That plan we look at every 3 months or so. And it's at that time that we can adjust, like, okay, that's going really well right now, but now there's this new thing, or they've developed now this huge fear of germs in the drain, and can we work on that? And that's fine. So progress, it really is, it comes in waves. But it's up to the family at the end of the day what their priorities are. Every family has different goals for their child, and as a child gets older, they have different goals for themselves, and that all has to be taken into account when you're making a plan.
Okay, I'm going to go off script for a minute because this is not even like in my questions, but so when, let's say a parent has just, it's their first meeting with you, what can they expect from that first meeting with the occupational therapist? What happens at the very first meeting?
Yeah, I had one today.
Awesome. Let's tell me about
it. Yeah. So the way I usually start is asking them what they know about OT.
Right.
You know, because a lot of times the child doesn't have any diagnosis yet.
Yeah.
They were just like maybe had a flag on a questionnaire or something. They're like, go see OT, go see speech. And the parents are kind of like, I don't know. And, my goal in that moment is to figure out exactly how that kid is doing compared to same-aged children, just so we can see how they're doing developmentally and what their strengths are and what they might be having a hard time with. And then OT's job really is to either build the skills that they need to complete a task or adapt the task itself and or adapt the environment that that task happens in order to make that child successful no matter what body or brain they were born with. So with lots of parent questions about what a typical day looks like for that child. There might be extra testing for fine motor development, sensory processing, executive functioning, or feeding are the main ones that we look at. And there's also lots of education at that first meeting and evaluation. A lot of parents ask big questions like, is something wrong? And the answer is always no.
I know firsthand what it's like when you're just overwhelmed and you expect so much, especially out of just the first meeting. And it's really not a situation where you can get all of that out of that very first meeting. This is just, hey, I'm just trying to get a feel for your child. So I completely understand that. What can I do? And this happens a lot when, let's say we've had breaks. Let's say he regresses or has some sort of setbacks. What can I do for that? Do I just talk to you? Well, I talk to you about everything. Anytime anything happens with him, I come and call you up. But what can I do or any parent do if they see that their child is regressing?
It does happen, you know, so many things can impact how a child is performing in their goal areas. They might, something might have happened, or maybe they're in a growth spurt, or they've gone through puberty, or, like so much can go on. But I think the main important thing is that you have to meet your child where they're at that day. So if you have a goal that is beyond what your child can do at their best right now, then we have to work on what they're best at right now, and just take it back a step and just like keep pushing forward or adjust the plan as needed, because there's no timeline. You don't have to meet a certain mark when you're in therapy at a certain time, really. It's very flexible and fluid, and it's constantly changing. So
great. So how do I explain like our son's needs to other family members or teachers? And this is funny because I am a person, maybe because I do a lot of talking. So I created like these little brochures for Santana that had all this information about him on there. And you can speak to it that like, even I try to keep you or his team, everybody looped in and make sure that everybody's on the same page with IEPs and stuff like that. But how can I communicate that to like family members or teachers? I mean, I don't want to just walk around and just hand somebody a pamphlet either.
The pamphlet's awesome. No, that's amazing to bring it to meet the teacher night and explain, this is my child. This is what works well for him. Like, for example, he gets really distracted by sound. So I noticed that he does better when he sits in the front of the room. Those kind of things are really helpful for a teacher to know.
Yes.
But you're right. When you're talking to family, it's kind of awkward to hand them that. So I think a good way to go about it is just talk about it in a strengths-based way. You know, like he has a really healthy brain. It's a neurodevelopmental condition. It's not because of any way of how he was raised.
Right. It's not because I ate McDonald's.
Exactly. And again, he's completely healthy and happy. And these are the things you might see, you know, like he gets overwhelmed in crowds. And so I might notice that he's overwhelmed and we'll go take a break, but we'll come right back when we're ready. And just kind of destigmatizing the stimming about, oh, this is what he does when he's really happy. It might get really loud in here, you know, because he does that when he's excited and it's a good thing. And, you know, we can, you don't have to act alarmed when you hear that or things like that.
So when choosing a therapist, I know it might be different for everyone. What should parents look for when they're choosing a therapist?
I think it's a really important relationship.
Yeah.
And so you need to find someone who you feel sees all of the strengths in your child.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing. And that they hear you out. That if you have concerns, that they're not just steamrolling ahead with what this standardized assessment says should come next.
Right.
If that's not your priority, or if there's other things that are, you know, more important at that time, that's what we focus on. I think that a therapist really should change themselves in order to fit the needs of the family and the child.
Yes.
So if they're not doing that, or they seem abrasive, or the child doesn't like them, those are
red flags.
Maybe, They should feel like they're having fun and playing.
Yes. So again, I'm gonna go off script here. I want to take this opportunity to talk about like building community. Like, even though we're talking about stuff that we see or questions that people might ask you, like about occupational therapy, I want to take this time to talk about building community and how you are out here doing your thing, trying to help us build community. And you have created this whole little world, this community at Desert Valley Pediatric Therapy. Yeah, that's the whole name. And I want to talk about that for a second and how that helps parents like me. So can you tell us about what you've created?
Sure. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, being a therapist, you just see parent after parent after parent. They feel completely isolated.
Right.
It's really difficult sometimes, you know, and you have to reinvent the wheel over and over again. There's so much that you learn by trial and error. And I felt like the middleman between families. Like, I know that you're an expert in this, you've done this before. And so I'll be telling my other family, like, oh, I have a friend that did this. And it's like, this is silly.
Right.
And it just, I see a lot of burnout among caregivers.
Yes.
And I felt like I've just been giving the same education and you know, talks to people over and over again. And so, I created Desert Valley Village. It's a caregiver support group system, and we do a lot of education too. So we meet about once a month. And any caregivers can come and just kind of share what's been going on. It's normally about a specific topic, so that we can kind of keep it focused on one thing. And it's been amazing seeing families relate to one another and become friends outside of this. I think it's been really powerful, and it's just growing. So,
I'm happy that you've done this, because I know we've talked about it a lot. And everybody out there, just so you know, I share about it on my social media. Robin shares about it on her social media. So if you're following me, you're going to see me post about these workshops that she's giving. It's even though we live in Phoenix, you can still Zoom in.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody, anywhere can be a part of this family, this community that we are building so that we can help support each other. So you don't have to live in Phoenix to be a part of this. We can Zoom right in.
And it's free.
Yes. We like free, especially in terms of therapy, because therapy costs a lot of money.
Yes.
Yeah, there's that. That's a topic for a whole nother day. But thank you, Robin, for coming in and talking to my community and sharing more about this topic, especially occupational therapy. I feel like it's been so beneficial for our son. We also do, of course, speech therapy, but I feel like when it comes to OT, I'm always, even when I'm talking to his teachers, I always come to you with a lot of the stuff we have going on. So I say to you, hey, he's doing this. Can you help me come up with a plan? And you have always been really awesome. And if you can come to IEP meetings, you have been, if we can work it in our schedule, you've done that as well. And I think, yes, that's probably, I'm not going to promise that your therapist is going to do that. But it's great when you do have a therapist who is there to support your family in so many ways. Santana, how about you come in here right now and just, because Santana is back there really trying to get involved.
Can I eat my full-on cookie
Come on.
from Subway?
Come on, you can come sit over here with me. Come on.
Mom.
But honestly, I do thoroughly enjoy having these conversations. So if anybody has any other questions or comments or wants to share anything, please make sure to reach out to either one of us, and we will try to share the information. There's no gatekeeping over here. We're here to support each other, to help each other. And really, that's all we can ask for. That's how I have best learned here. Again, anytime I find anything out, I just share it with everybody else. And we love Robin, don't we?
Yes.
So this has been a really insightful conversation. Thank you so much, Robin, for coming in and taking the time out to talk to my community. And if you loved this video, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And we'd love to hear from you too. So drop some comments below.